All right, everyone, welcome to another edition of Inspiring Stories of Transformation. I'm Jomo, and if this is your first time tuning into Inspiring Stories of Transformation, the overview and kind of the outline for the show is to bring on inspiring entrepreneurs to share their story, to open up and to show you kind of the behind the scenes version of how they were able to achieve the success that they were able to achieve in their business, in their life, in their relationships. And it's something that I've always felt was kind of unnoticed or kind of brushed aside, because a lot of times we see these people that are very successful and we don't see the backstory. And so I really like to bring people on so that they can get real and personal and help connect you to I guess like your personal empowerment to then go out there and do the big things that you want to create in the world as an entrepreneur. So my guest today, I'm very excited to have her on, is Miss Chandra Nicole. You can say hi.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, Chandra. So I've been following Chandra online for, I guess it's been like maybe a year or so, and I'm always intrigued by what she's sharing. She's off the wall. She says things that like most people are scared to say, and she uses a lot of curse words. She uses a lot of expletives. So I really think that it's cool that she's willing to kind of put herself on the line. And I know there was one time where I saw her talking about a meditation retreat that she went to, a silent meditation retreat. You did that, right? A 10-day
I
silent?
I did do that recently, yeah.
Uh-huh.
in Joshua Tree, and that was totally crazy. It
Oh,
was,
wow.
yeah, 10 days Vipassana, no electronics, no talking, no. I mean, all you did was meditate for like 14 hours a day. It was pretty
Intense.
cool. Yeah, it was pretty cool. It helped me to realize actually how we distract ourselves from our internal environment, you know?
Mm.
And we do it in like the littlest sort of ways, even by just like talking, you know, all this external chatter all the time. Not that I have a problem with chatter because I do it all the time, but it just definitely gave me a glimpse into all the ways that I distract myself, you know,
Mm.
from looking at some things that I didn't want to look at.
Mm. So
So yeah, I did do
it
that.
brought you more to center, so you can be more
Yeah,
focused
for sure,
with
for
what you put
sure.
out there. Definitely.
Yeah, but the thing that I learned, I like my biggest takeaway from that really was it doesn't matter the modality or the technique or whatever. Um, it's a daily it's a daily discipline. It's a daily divine discipline, right? Because I left the meditation feeling like vibrating, you know, like it was floating. But then I went back into the world, and within 10 days, I was kind of like re-immersed in some old habits of mine and stuff like that. So it doesn't matter the thing. It actually the most important part is our daily intention, right? And what I've been calling daily divine discipline, basically, right? Making your internal landscape your number one priority every single day, right, regardless. And I think that this is a trap that we fall into a lot of times, and this is where we become like self-help addicts, right, where we go from like modality to modality, to retreat, to teacher, to healer, to book, to course, and it's like this never-ending search, external search for ourselves, and we'll never find it there, and then at the end of the day, when we leave the thing, if we're not setting that daily discipline, we just kind of go back to our old habits. So that
Mm.
was like my biggest takeaway probably from if I was gonna nutshell it.
Very
So
cool. Very
yeah,
cool. All right. So if you want to kind of get us rolling with the inspiring stories of transformation and
okay,
kind of talk about where you come from,
yeah,
talk about what it was like for you, maybe even as far back as growing up, and how you really pulled yourself, or I guess you could say how it all kind of evolved.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, I was just going to say thank you to you for doing this interview series, because I think that's really valuable. You know, there is no such thing as an overnight success, and a lot of times it does look that way. You know, it appears that way, but there's always a lot of learning and growing and fumbling and whatnot that happens before that point in time that nobody sees. So I think it's important for people to understand that there is a process. You know, there's a transformation process that occurs, and it helps to, like, when you know that and understand that, and you can see that other people's journeys, like real stories, it can help you kind of relax into the process a little bit and not judge yourself for being like, why, well, this person did it like overnight, why can't I, you know, why isn't it working for me, or whatever, like setting up these false expectations. So it just like helps us, because the whole point is the adventure of it, right? So let's relax into the adventure of it. So thank you. Thank you for creating a space to allow people to relax into the adventure of this crazy ass life journey, right?
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, okay, so I guess when I was in my teens, I was looking at the world around me, and it never made any fucking sense, any of it. Like people going to work, you know, the government. Like, wait a minute, I have to have a piece of paper to go onto another part of the planet that is my home. You know, like none of these things made sense to me at all. Like, I have to wear my seatbelt. Why do I have to wear my seatbelt? Who the hell cares, right? Like, like, why do you care if I'm wearing my seatbelt or not? You know, like, why? And why do I have to go to school? This is bullshit. And so, I just became. Well, the only thing that I knew to do at that point in time was if I saw something that I didn't like, I only knew to rebel against it. You know, and that seems to be a pretty common teenage experience, right? For many of us, anyways. It's not everybody's, but so I just like became a rebel essentially, and I like dropped out of high school when I was 17 and moved in with my abusive boyfriend and worked at Taco Bell, and it was very glamorous and romantic, and it was actually quite horrible. But I ultimately ended up graduating on time, and not that I even think that matters anymore. But what ended up happening, I was like, I'm never doing this, you know, this thing that everyone else is doing, because it doesn't make any sense to me. But so what ended up happening is I got knocked up. And I had a baby when I was 20 years old. And so that changed everything, you know. I was like, fuck, I guess I have to do this thing, you know, this life thing that everybody's telling me that I have to do, that society and, you know, all the conventional. And, okay, I lived in the Midwest, too, so this was just, like, amplified, because that's what you do in the Midwest. I'm from Nebraska, and that's what you do in the Midwest, you know. You get married, you have a baby, you get the house, you have the great job, or you're a stay-at-home mother, right? And that's what you do every day, forever and ever. Shoot me now. But so anyways, I thought that that's what I had to do, you know, for the sake of my daughter, to give her a good life. I thought that's what she needed for happiness. And so I did it, you know. I when I was 22 years old, I bought a house like in the country on a half an acre of land, and I had like a really great career as a hairstylist for like 15 years. I got married to this really great guy. You know, I had great friends. It was just like perfect, you know, on paper. And it's not that I wasn't happy necessarily. I was missing something, you know? And so I woke up one day, it was literally like I woke up one day and I was like, what the hell, where am I, you know, like, how did I get here? And then I had like a existential midlife crisis. I was like, I can't do this forever. And I just, but even deeper than that, I just could feel something calling to me, like I could feel it in my heart. And I was really confused at that point in time. You know, I hadn't started exploring spirituality or personal development or anything like that at all. I could just feel that there's something calling to me. I didn't know what it was. And so I went to Barnes & Noble and bought my first self-help book ever. A couple like fell off the shelf at me, seriously, like as I was walking by, and so I ended up buying In the Meantime by Jan Van Zant, which is a book about like learning to love yourself, right? And kind of the starting to get in the basics of reality creation, you know, like how you create reality. And I thought the book was fucking crazy, right? like what is this lady talking about? She's on drugs. And but I kept the book, and I made it like a little way through, and then I tried to read it again. I make it a little way farther through, and I kept that book. And over the course of years, I read it like 10 times. It was all dog-eared and highlighted, and I like loaned it out to friends, and I would buy it for friends who were kind of like in a crossroads sort of situation, stuff like that. So that book kind of changed my life. But shortly after I bought that book, I told my husband that I couldn't do what we were doing anymore, and so I left my husband. I sold my house. I moved back. I was like right out in a little town right outside of Lincoln, Nebraska, which is my hometown. Moved back into the city, and the next like 10 years were just, I mean, the next 5 to 7 years, I guess I could say, were just they were a fucking disaster, basically. I was so confused, you know. I didn't know what I didn't know what this thing in my heart was that was calling to me, you know. I'm like, I'm crazy. I don't even know what I'm doing, you know. And everyone around me thought I was crazy. They had no idea. And I was moving from like apartment to apartment. My business was starting to fail miserably because I didn't want to be there, you know what I mean? And so I kind of like crumbled my life, and I was really pretty depressed, and I was numbing my depression with a lot of alcohol and a lot of men. Those were my two vices. And so about 3 years ago, my last serious romantic relationship ended. And it was at that point in time that I took a trip to Hawaii. I was telling you about this right before we got on. And just deconstructed my whole reality. Like basically I questioned everything that I knew to be true. And the last 3 years since then have been hugely transformational. I sold everything that I owned and up and moved to California, which was a long-time dream of mine. I showed up with 2 duffel bags full of stuff that I owned. I knew no one in Santa Barbara. I'd been wanting to move to Santa Barbara for like 3 years, and I don't even know why. I'd never even been there. I showed up in Santa Barbara. I didn't know anyone. I had like $200 to my name, no job, no clients, nothing. I ended up meeting a friend of mine out there, but yeah. So I made it work, and then I flew my daughter out, and then I did that for about a year, and then I ended up just going on this like crazy gypsy adventure. I sold everything that I owned again because I had accumulated a bunch of stuff for over a year, and just went out on this gypsy adventure also again with no money, no nothing. And I think that I had to, for me, I think it was a process of proving to myself these creation principles that I'd been learning, and also a process of detaching from anything physical, you know, that I might have been finding comfort in, basically. Like I removed all of my comfort so that I had to find comfort within myself, and then also I think that I had to show myself that I could create something from nothing. So I basically like multiple times faced negative money in my bank account, homelessness, yeah, and it's really interesting because out of that I managed to, in a very short amount of time, create a large amount of money and procure myself a condo like 2 blocks from the sea, which is where I'm at now. And so I can go more into detail about that story if you'd like, but that's like in a nutshell the big story. But the really interesting thing here is that even 10 years ago when I left my American dream sort of scenario, I knew for certain that when I figured out how to navigate my life, I'd devote the rest of my days helping other people navigate their life and create the life that's in their heart to create. So, and that's held consistent over 10 years. So here I am, still holding true to that knowing in my heart. So, and I believe that we all have something within us that we're called to do, you know, called to create or be, and you know, it doesn't even have to be something like massively scaled. but there's something that we're wanting to do, and it can be really scary to follow that. You know, there's a lot of unknowns involved in that, and so that's what I'm really passionate about talking about and helping people with as well.
Wow. Okay, so that's a pretty in-depth kind of overview of your whole story, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the part that you said, because I think this is actually the turning point, at least like from my perspective, of a lot of entrepreneurs' lives. They go through all these, contrasting experiences where, they're doing all these things that they don't necessarily want to be doing. And then they reach kind of like a breaking point or a turning point where they decide, they're going to go in this completely different direction that everybody around them thinks they're crazy for, and it doesn't have to be like really dramatic, like yours was very, at least the way that you described it was very dramatic.
It was pretty dramatic.
Yeah. So it's like taking that huge leap of faith. That it's varying degrees for every person. But can you kind of like go back to that moment in time, and what was it that made you decide that the life that you were living was not what you wanted to be doing anymore, and what made you decide to go in the direction that you went? Like what woke you up to a new direction, and what was kind of the vision that you started moving towards, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So there's been a couple like really pivotal turning point moments for me. One was when I was 26 years old, like back before I even left my husband. I was standing in the shower one day shaving my legs, and like this idea, this was before I even bought the like self-help book, right? This idea pops into my head, and at the time it was like profound to me. It said, stop me mid-shave, I was like, it said, what if you create your own, what if heaven and hell is not a place that you go to? What if it's something you create here on earth? And so that was my first like, whoa, maybe I have a little more control over my, reality than I was formerly aware of. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that I think kind of set me off on the trajectory of like leaving everything, right? But then there was another really pivotal moment when I was 30 years old, so about 6 years ago. I remember it. I just actually wrote a blog post a little bit about it, but I was sitting on my couch, my red couch in my apartment. I bought it red purposely because I drank so much red wine that I didn't want it to get stained when I spilled it, So I'm sitting on this red couch in my apartment. I've been wearing the same yoga pants and like shirt for a week straight. It was all like stained, and I'm just like sitting there in despair. I cannot make myself like get off my couch, and I'm just like weeping, and my mom like calls at some point, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're a fucking disaster." And so she comes over. Well, she didn't say that, but that's how I retell the story. Anyways, she comes over, and I remember having this conversation with her, and she was like, "Shandy," that's what she calls me. "Shandy, you might just have to, do some things you don't want to do, just so that you can have a stable life, and like that's just how life is. You just got to do some things you don't want to do, right?" And I was like, fuck that, right? Like if I have to live my life for my weekends and like wait until I'm retired to like go have all the adventures I want to have and stuff like that, I'm like, I'd rather not do this, And I kind of reached this like suicidal despair moment, like I was kind of like, I'd rather not live on this planet than stay here and have my spirit suffocated, basically, right? By like conforming to this lifestyle that everyone's telling me I need to adhere to. And so that was the moment where staying in my current condition became scarier to me than the unknowns of following my heart, right? And so I think that I've come to find that that's what it requires. That's what you have to find within yourself. Hold on just a second. I had some weird popping up on my computer. That's what you have to find within yourself in order to have the guts to persevere, basically, right? Like whatever life you're looking to create has to be so important, so meaningful to you, right, that it's more important than anything else that you're leaving, right? Or any fears that you're facing or any unknowns that you're coming up against. So that was probably the biggest pivotal point for me. It took me a few more years before I finally left and stuff. But what I ended up doing was starting my first blog at that point in time. It was a food blog. It's called the Earth Food Experiment, and it was about like how the foods that we put in our body, affect us and stuff like that. But the core of what I was writing about was really all the personal development stuff that I was exploring. So I was using it kind of as a backdoor to talk about what I really wanted to talk about.
Cool. So it was like bridging the gap between something you were passionate about and other people were passionate about, and then merging in some knowledge, like exactly. deep wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then the next turning point was my boyfriend broke up with me, and it was a total crossroad. It was a crux for me, and I was like, I can't, because normally what I do would be like go to another man immediately, right, to like fill that hole in my life, and so I just refused to do that. And so I got really, I started exploring. That's when I started exploring access consciousness a little bit, and I started to realize how powerful of a creator I was. I actually I have this really crazy story where I knew that I had to get to Hawaii for this retreat, and I had no money, and I had no idea how I was going to get there. And I was insanely present at that point in time in my life because whenever I was in the past or the future was when I experienced the most pain, right? Because I was nostalgic for my boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend, or I was thinking about the life that we'd planned together in the future, And so the only place that I didn't have pain was in the present moment. And in that present moment, I realized how powerful I was. I was creating things, crazy things. For instance, my wedding ring that I still had or kept, but I thought that I had lost several years ago. And you have to keep in mind that I was moving every year or so to a different place. So I was in a new place. I thought that I had lost this diamond a couple years before at a different place. I got this prompting to go clean my room, and so I'm on my hands and knees cleaning the little nooks and crannies of my room and stuff. And I find embedded in my carpet in this apartment my diamond ring.
What?
I know, right? And so this is the I know. This is the time when I was asking for how can I get to Hawaii? So I pulled the ring out of my carpet and I took it to the jewelry store and I sold it for $1,000 and bought a plane ticket to Hawaii. Right? So crazy shit was happening, and so that really started to get me playing around with, oh shit, how am I creating my reality? Am I way more powerful than I even ever knew, And so that was the next really big turning point where I started running a bunch of experiments. The next few years were basically me running experiments on my life to see if this shit worked, right? Because I knew that I was going to be working with other people, and helping them with their life and their. What I've come to learn now is that I work with leaders, entrepreneurs as well, people who are here to actually make a large impact on humanity, who are going to touch a lot of people's lives and who are at that crossroad point, that you were talking about, helping them kind of traverse that divide. But I knew that I had to experiment with this stuff because I couldn't teach it to other people unless I knew for certain that it worked. My life. So that was another really big turning point for me. There's so many.
So you're talking about these manifestation principles, these reality creation principles that really helped guide you and helped you create the life from that point moving forward. And I'm still blown away by that story with your diamond ring. Like,
Yeah.
that's like teletransportation kind of
Yeah.
crazy shit.
Yeah. There was another, I gotta tell you this one quick story too, about the same time. I was packing up to move to, because I was planning on moving to Santa Barbara, and I had to be somewhere, and I only had like 20 minutes or something like that. And so I was like, I'm just gonna go pack up a closet or something real quick, in this 20 minutes. And I packed up like all of my closets in the apartment, and I was just like really present in the moment. All I was thinking about was exactly what I was doing, and I was like feeling really blissful about what I was doing. And I packed up a bunch of stuff, and I was like, oh shit, I'm probably late, like I've been packing forever. And I ran into my kitchen to look at my clock on the microwave, and like 5 minutes had passed. Right? Okay. So anyways, this is like, that's just a little insight to how magical we actually are.
I love looking at like physical examples of our power. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's like a YouTube video of this guy who he was in a boxing match, and his shoulder came out. So he basically was fighting this boxing match one-armed, and he ended up knocking the guy out. Like it was incredible. And like there's like those videos of like, we're incredible human beings or whatever, showing people doing like these like extreme like death-defying stunts and stuff.
Yeah.
And it seems like you have to tap into a certain part of yourself in order to experience those kinds of things. So is that kind of what you're talking about with like those reality creation principles? Like, you step into like this almost like an alternate reality where you are able to defy physics, like defy what everyone or most people believe is possible, and just like, show yourself and show others that it is possible.
Yep, absolutely. And it almost feels like aligning. This is the way that I feel it and understand it now. It's like aligning. It's almost aligning with a reality that already exists. You're just not currently aware of. Mm-hmm. So it's this process, and all it is, it's like a simple process in theory. The implementation can be a little bit more complicated, because we're so physically focused, the majority of us, that we see everything that we see in our physical experience, we assume as truth, and so, which just strengthens our belief in the realness of it. And so in order to kind of unplug yourself from the matrix, so to speak, right, we've got to take an honest look at what we're believing to be true and not true. Because basically your reality is you're going to line up with the reality that exactly matches everything you believe to be true, period, right? And so if you want a different experience, if you want a different reality experience, you've got to remove your focus physically, right? Remove the physical focus. You can be aware of it. It's not like you have to be in denial about where you're at or anything like that. But you can see it and be like, oh, cool. This is the reality that I'm aligning with right now. But is that the ultimate truth of me? Does this have to be my ultimate experience, or can I create something different, right? And so it's just questioning those beliefs. I kind of talk about it like I try them on, and that's like the experiments that I talk about that I run on my life all the time. I still do. Just like try on a belief, like clothes in my closet. Does this feel good? Does this belief feel good for me? If it doesn't feel good for me, then fuck it. That motherfucker's going to the Goodwill, right? Like, I don't want that. I don't care. I don't care what anybody else says, And that was a process getting to that point for me, because I was really concerned with what other people thought about, what they thought was real and not real. And if I thought something was real that they didn't think was real, were they going to think I'm crazy and whatnot, I know someone was asking that question. beforehand. And so what I had to do was I had to disconnect. I was actually just talking to my mom about this. She's visiting me in Hawaii right now. I had to disconnect from my family and from everything. You know, I think that's why I up and left. I had to disconnect from everything that I'd ever known or identified with, I guess you could say, in order to find out what I believed in, you know, like what felt good for me. And it's just this matter of trying these beliefs on, and you have to pay no attention necessarily to the physical, what's happening in the physical. I mean, you pay attention to it, but you just focus on what you want to believe. And then you look for evidence, basically. You look for little evidences starting to pop up in your reality based on, you know, what you're starting to believe. And you use that as evidence in your experiments, right? Like say if you've been in a scarcity mentality for a long time, like a lack mentality, right? Like that's something that I'm coming out of. I was in a scarcity mentality for a long time. Basically, I had to start finding clues in my reality that would support my new belief that I'm affluent and abundant, right? And that money comes easily to me. Because I need lots of money to be able to get out in the world and do what I'm here to do and deliver the message that I'm here to deliver, right? Like I need resources. It's just the way that it is. And so I started telling myself a new story, you know, like when I'd go to the grocery store and pay for something, my default was, oh fuck, you know, that's too much money, or it was like this feeling of losing something, right? Like, oh, I'm losing this money, right? And so I had to catch myself, you know, I still actually catch myself mid-belief, you know, mid-thought. You gotta like look at your playlist. I also talk about like a music playlist that's just running on default, right? You gotta look at your playlist, and I'm like, does that thought feel good to me? You know what I mean? Does that feel in alignment with the reality that I'm aligning with? No, you know. So I'll stop myself, and instead I would say like, oh look, I have this amount of money in my account. I'm abundant, right? Or then like if I'd find like $1 in my pocket, you know, I washed my laundry and some dollars came out of my pocket, you know, like $5, whatever. I'm like, oh look, I had extra money I didn't even know about. You know, that's surely a sign that I'm abundant, right? Like if I have money around that I didn't even know that I had, where before I like was very aware of every single dollar that I had, right? And it, like as I start telling myself, and at first like you have to kind of squeeze evidence out of your reality, right? Like it's not going to be really apparent, and you can like even make stuff up, tell yourself a story. It doesn't even matter. I'll tell whatever story I got to tell to help myself lean into a belief that feels better. To my clients, I'll tell any story that I have to tell them. I don't care what. I'll just make it up. I don't give a shit. Like if it helps them lean further into a belief that feels good, you know, then I'll do it. Like, I don't care. So I'll squeeze evidence out of my reality, you know, like I'm milking a cow, milking my reality for evidence. And then as you collect evidence, it becomes like a momentum. It becomes a snowball, right? So you start to believe a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And the more you believe, the more evidence starts popping up, right? And the more evidence starts popping up, the more you believe more, right? And then pretty soon, like money's just like in multiple accounts. You're like, oh god, I have hundreds of dollars here, I have thousands of dollars here, I have, you know, it's like there's money everywhere. How did that happen, right? You know, it's that conscious choice of trying on a new belief and not allowing your physical reality to push you around. You know, you gotta be the boss of it, right?
Definitely.
So, and that honestly is the whole process of creating a new reality. It gets more, you know, intricate, obviously, as you start dealing with beliefs that you've had for a really long time, you know, and that you've identified with and that you're kind of addicted to, or you find there's like an emotional payoff in it for you. You know, it gets a little sticky. It gets a lot sticky. So there's lots of tricks and things that you can use, but like as a whole, that's really the process that I've experienced.
I really like that. It's so the process, like in a nutshell, is like choosing a belief that you want, finding all the reasons in your life that kind of support that belief. So I've heard this from like Tony Robbins, where it's like, you know, there's like a table and then there's like legs on the table. So like if you want to create like a new belief, you basically have to have the support there. So you have to have all the different kind of stories about your life that support that belief in order for it to actually like stick.
Yeah.
Because this was actually like another question I wanted to ask you. So when you're kind of putting in those new beliefs and you're like reinstalling the software, what do you do when like a belief that doesn't like what tool do you use when a belief that doesn't serve you or doesn't serve that belief system pops up? Because they're going to pop up.
Yeah. Right. You got to kick those legs out from under that table, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I call it flipping the bitch. Right? Because if you got a reality pop up or a belief pop up, right? So a belief, just in the very simplest form, is anything that is a conclusion, right? Anything that you're definitively stating is a belief. And so we go around just like saying this is this and that is that and this is that, and we don't even like think to question things, like the simplest example. I had like a bookshelf full of books that I wanted to get to, and I was like in total overwhelm about it, because I was like, God, that's going to take so much time, and where do I start, and blah, blah, blah. And, like, I was functioning from this unquestioned belief that the way you read a book is you open up the front cover, and you read one page at a time, right? Like, that's just a belief that I thought there's no other way. That's just how you read a book, right? And then I was like, wait a minute. Is that the only way to read a book? And I was like, well, I started playing around with different possibilities. I was like, actually, I could just pick up a book and like read Factus Bibliomancy. I could just like pick it up and open to a page and receive a divine message, from that page. And so there's like simple things like that, and you can start. So that's what I call flipping the bitch. So you ask a bunch of questions, right? You just find conclusions in your life. Play hide and seek with conclusions. That's a game that I play all the time. When you find a conclusion, you flip the bitch. Like if you don't, like, you flip that motherfucker. It's a bitch belief. If it doesn't align with the reality that you're wanting to create, it's a bitch, right? So flip it. Just like a house. Flip a house. So you just question it. The way that you open up a belief or a conclusion is by asking questions. Okay, so that's one way. The real flip in the bitch part, though, is taking a belief that you've got in your life that feels like a con. It feels like a bad, like something bad that happened. Like say if I was going to go back to my boyfriend dumping me or something like that, it could be like I had a belief that I'm not worthy of love or something like that because he dumped me, right? And so I could go back, maybe that belief is still playing in my life, and creating from that point. Because here's the thing: is we've got these beliefs installed so deep in our subconsciousness that a lot of times we can't see them. We don't even know they're running our show until. And that's the brilliance of our physical reality. That's the only thing that it's good for focusing on is when things pop up. It's going to show you all of your belief systems. It just is. I mean, like, you can find out your belief systems by looking at your reality, because they're in alignment with whatever you believe to be true, even if you're in denial about what you believe to be true. Like, it's going to pop up. So you can take a look at it and be like, oh, cool, like this shitty thing is happening in my life. That's a sure sign that I'm functioning from a belief that doesn't serve me anymore, right? So you can take a look at that belief, and if you want to, I mean, the important thing is to not tell stories around it. It's to undo the stories. So you can look at, like, say, unworthiness. Because of my boyfriend broke up with me, I can go back and find all the reasons that's not true, right? Find evidence for that not being true, and also how has that actually brought me to where I am today? You know what I mean? Like, it's actually a total pro, like none of this stuff would have happened if that wouldn't have happened, so I don't have to like deem myself unworthy. Actually, I created it perfectly. I'm a fucking genius, right? like flip the bitch, find all the pros in every single experience, right? Find something to be grateful for in every single thing that's occurring in your life, and you'll flip that bitch like in a second, right? And align yourself with something that feels more like a higher truth of you. that make sense?
Yeah, I think that was a simplified version at the end there, just being aware of what you're grateful for, because it shifts that vibration of,
Yeah,
it shifts you from scarcity to abundance.
absolutely. Yep. And it's all about vibration. I try to put it in, like layman's terms so that everybody can understand. Like that's my really big goal, is to take all these esoteric teachings, and distill it down and ground it in a way that anybody can understand it. But yeah, it has to, like, what I understand and feel and can see is energy, really. Like I understand what things are vibrating at, and we just have all this. Our problem. Okay, so I'm sure that you guys hear talk about the law of attraction all the time, right? And so the teaching most of the time is focusing on the asking for what you want, and that's only part of it. And that's actually, that part is done. Like, you don't even have to focus for the most part on asking, because you've been asking nonstop since you arrived on this planet by virtue of your contrast, the contrast that you're experiencing, and your desire. Every time you experience something you don't want, you send out an energetic asking for something you do want. So like the asking's already done. But before you can get into even more specific askings, basically you have to work on your receiving. That's the other part of the law of attraction that nobody talks about, really. And that's why it doesn't work for anybody. It's because we're just like out here asking, right? But we suck at receiving. And receiving has to do with this vibrational space where there's no discord, that we don't have all this vibrational conflict happening in our lives, which are just conflicted beliefs, essentially, right? So we have to create a foundation, an energetic foundation, to build what I call your playground, the life that you really want. And so it's all about the vibration and gratitude. Being truly grateful is the fastest way for you to lay that vibrational receiving playground. You just have to get into a state of receiving. You have to feel worthy. You have to feel worthy of what you've been asking for always. You have to know that you are the creator of your reality 100%, basically, right? Like, if any of you is still trying to do like victim or blame or anything like that, it's going to throw off your vibration, and send you into conflict. And you have to actually not even care if it shows up or not. And that's the hardest part, right? You got to remove that expectation, because every time you're in expectation, you're in this want, like graspy want space, which is lack. And so when you're being lack, you get more lack. And so that's the hardest part for us humans, is to get into that space of receiving. And gratitude is very powerful. It transmutes everything underneath of it, everything vibrationally underneath of it. Alchemy, bitches.
So I think what I'm observing in Chandra that I'm grateful for right now is her ability to just speak and speak and speak and speak to the point where it just like disrupts whatever has been kind of like running in the background, and kind of gives you that evidence and gives you that proof that I think that's honestly why I appreciate and love this interview series to begin with, is like just showing those stories, showcasing those stories of transformation and how we can kind of like progress without holding on to I guess what was preventing us from progressing before. It's like shifting that energy instantaneously.
Yeah.
The one thing that was coming up for me as you were kind of like talking was I've been noticing something recently and this actually kind of relates to the question that was asked, and I actually want to see if any of you guys that are tuning in live right now want to ask specific questions. Go to the Facebook page, the event page, and ask a question, because I'd love to pick Chandra's brain, and I'm sure you would as well. So give me one sec. Let me just make sure that if there's any other questions. But basically what I was getting at was there's this this thing that I've noticed I do lately, which is and this has to do completely with you know, valuing other people's opinions, but I wasn't like consciously aware of it. But it's like when I want to purchase something, when I want to invest in something, I go online and I look at all the reviews. If I want to like pursue a job opportunity, I go online and look at all the reviews of the people who have worked there. You know, and it's like I do it unconsciously almost, because like if there's a lot of good reviews, then I'll likely buy it. But if there's like a lot of bad reviews, then I'll start questioning if it's the right path for me. So it's like I'm basing my reality on everyone else's realities. And so what's like what's a way to like shift that, you know, like what's a reframing, a way to reframe that, so that and how do I figure out, you know, what's a good path, and how do I learn from other people who have you know, invested in something before me without like depending on their opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that kind of in between thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really easy to allow our thoughts to become the dictator of our experience, when really it's just supposed to be, you know, a sense like touch or taste or sight, you know, sight, sound, whatever. But for some reason we've given it like full reign of creation making. So there's like a better way to navigate your experience, and that is by energy. And really, it's like this feeling that you get. You know, it feels like when you're not in alignment with a truth of yours, like something that's a highest truth for you, it feels, I always say it feels like a fortress, you know? It feels like you're stuck in this fortress and you can't get out, and you're kind of like thrashing around, you know, or you feel shackled, or to me it feels like claustrophobic, you know, or restrictive. I believe the world calls it stress. And I believe it's been scientifically proven that stress can kill you, right? So that's a pretty good sign that when we do stress, you know, all stress is like this, it's like this restrictive feeling, right?
It feels like it's like a suffocating your heart, like hands around your heart.
Yeah, right. And so, and there's obviously there's varying grades of that feeling. It's not always quite so obvious, you know. But if you start playing around with that energy, you become more and more keen to it. But so basically, from my experience and my understanding, when we're doing that, anything that feels like that contraction, that stress, we're actually cutting off our life source. You know, we're cutting off our access to the divine or the universe or whatever. You know, that like that greater field of information that we have access to at all times, we cut ourselves off to that a lot. When we do stress, it's like all this mind stuff, and it's really loud, and it's busy, and it's like exhausting, and when you're doing it, you feel like, you know, you got ran over, like you got beat up by your life at the end of the day, right? And you're just like exhausted.
Can it also be seen as like an indication, like a sign that you're thinking like thoughts that are holding you back, like that's like a physical manifestation of the fact that you're thinking the wrong thing? Like you're not, I don't know about like right or wrong, but like you're thinking something that's preventing you from expanding.
Yeah, I have a piece. I'm going to finish the first piece, but there's a piece to what you said that's vitally important. So, so like anything that feels the opposite of that, you know, like a playground, right? Like free, floaty, free, I like the word freedom, expansive, whatever, that's in alignment with your higher truth. So you can play this game. Did you ever play the hot cold game when you were little, where you'd like hide something from a friend of yours, right? And then you'd try to like guide them to it. When they were getting closer, it was like hotter, hotter, farther away, colder, colder. Okay, so like when you're doing contraction, you're colder, colder, colder. The thing that you've hidden is your highest truth. So you came to this life as an infinite being. You're like, wouldn't it be fun if we played this game where we hid our truth from ourselves, right? And the truth that we're like powerful creators. I wonder if we could remember, you know? Wouldn't that be a fun game to play? So let's do this thing, right? So we show up, we hide our truth from ourselves, and then we go on this mission of finding it, right? And so that energy is a far more reliable navigational system than your thoughts. Your thoughts only understand what it's experiencing in this moment, right? And so you can kind of play a game with yourself and start just paying attention to the energy in your body. You know, is this feeling like a fortress, or is this feeling like a playground, or any varying degrees, you know, in there. And you know, this process, when you locate something that's restrictive like that, basically, here's the piece that we don't look at a lot, is that in order for a belief system to come up and not be a part of your energetic field anymore, it actually has to come up. You have to witness it. You have to experience it. And you have to choose, right? So this is the process. You become aware, you make a choice. Awareness and choice, right? So when it comes up, you have one of two options. You can identify with it, right, and believe those thoughts about what's going on, which then just locks it back down into your energetic system to come up later. It will keep coming up if you haven't noticed. It'll come up over and over and over again because it just wants to leave, right? Like it's not in alignment with you. And you're always on a path of evolution to your highest alignment, right? You're never not on that journey. You can't ever go backwards, so don't worry about that. You know, you're never in the wrong place. So the thing is that when that stuck energy comes up, all the thoughts that were sticking them down in your energetic system are going to come up with it. You actually have to think the thoughts as they're leaving, right? You have to think the judgments of yourself as they're leaving. So you have to think the thoughts without identifying with the thoughts, right? And so that's the piece, right? So what if you could be like, oh, look at that thought, right? You become the observer of your thoughts. Look at that thought. And then that's where you can ask questions like, wait a minute, is this even the truth of me? Do I have to identify it? You can play around with like finding evidence why it's not true. Or when you get really good at it, you know, after you practice for a little bit, you can just see a thought and be like, oh, that's interesting, bye-bye, you know, oh, that's interesting, bye-bye. You just kind of like watch them leave, you know, like, wow, I used to think that about myself? That's insane, right? Goodbye, right? And so then because what you're feeling and what you're thinking about, you're actually healing from your system. So it's not that it's bad, and this is where we stick ourselves, is we see these thoughts come up and we're like, oh, that's bad, I shouldn't be thinking that, you know? And so we do this like resistance of the thought or resistance of the feeling, and all that does is lock it back down too, right, into your system, because you have this judgment of it being bad, and so which is just a series of stories as well.
That process reminds me of how I felt when I've done like sales jobs, where it's like knowing that it's like that whole like you know, it's a numbers game kind of thing, where it's like it goes back to that whole like abundance versus scarcity. Like when you're in that vibration of abundance, you recognize that where you are right now, you can basically just navigate from opportunity to opportunity to opportunity to opportunity, rather than, you know, needing it to be one particular person or one particular opportunity. You're much more flexible, much more fluid, and you don't need that thing. It might enhance your reality, but you don't need it. It's like you're good where you are. You know, you already have everything you need, like within yourself right now.
Yeah.
And from that space, then you just you just like boom, 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 like you're able to just then broadcast that out. And and it's like it's always like those who resonate with that energy and that presence are going to gravitate towards you, and those who don't are not. So it's more so about like energetically, that is really like the law of attraction, is like energetically you're attracting those who don't like need what you have, but those who are kind of operating in at a similar level as you, and like then there's a connection that's made because of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of that like that freedom from outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's never, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it is never the thing that we think we're after. We don't give a shit about it, honestly. When we take a good, honest look about it, all we care about is what we think that thing's going to make us feel, you know? And so you can have that feeling now, period. And then you just do things for the joy of it. I mean, and really when it all boils down, all we want is like peace, we want happiness, we want joy, you know? Like, and so if you just have that now, and you can have that now, no matter what your circumstances are, yeah, then everything just, like your reality becomes fucking magical is what happens. Like, shit just starts showing up, you know, people just start showing up. I started this this community called Rebels for Consciousness like 3 years ago, and I just had I had a desire to like connect with people, and I liked talking to people about the stuff that I was exploring, and I couldn't find anyone in my physical reality, and I like desired it so much, but I actually never anticipated anybody showing up. Like, I didn't think anybody was really going to show up. I just like started this page on Facebook, but my desire was so strong, and I had so little expectation for the outcome. You know, I wasn't attached to whether it worked or not. Basically, I just created this space, and then it was like I kind of like moved on to something else, you know. And then like in 2 months, 10,000 people showed up. You know, and it was crazy. But that's how powerful desire, that unattached desire. But it's like this really interesting space of, I call it empowered surrender, where you have to choose it strongly, right? Like unwavering choice, but then does not give a shit whether or not it actually shows up, and also you just have like total belief and trust that it will, like most likely it will show up at some point, you know, but you don't have any timeline associated to it, no agenda. And if it doesn't show up, it's because you like believe that it's because it wasn't in alignment with your highest, you know, it wasn't the best option. The universe maybe has a better plan, you know, like maybe there's something better, a better way to deliver what I've been asking for, you know. Like our minds can only think of such limited ideas for the most part. And so it's that space, you know, that you're talking about, that stuff just shows up, and pure magic is happening in your life.
Mm. Do you think that that you need to have a specific vision to like move towards? Or is like just living in that like that presence and like that knowing that whatever is going to happen to me is the right thing to happen to me? You know what I mean? Like how do you create direction when you are living in that space of presence? Like how do you actually like aim for something?
Yeah, that's a amazing thing to bring up, because that's a very common fear with people that I work with, especially, is like if I just allow myself to be all willy-nilly, I'll never do anything, right? Like I'll never be motivated to create anything, or you know, I'll just like be a lump on my couch and I'll stay smoking weed all day or whatever. You know? like that's a very honest fear, because the way that we're taught to do things on this planet is very like push, motivate, you know, like force through sort of thing. And so there is this curious relationship between motivation and inspiration, and so I mean, like some people are content to just like be a monk on a hilltop, you know what I mean, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that lifestyle if that brings you joy. Awesome. But for the majority of us, we like to create things because we're creators, right? so it's like where you get into the space of inspiration is when you move into creating for the pure joy of creating. That's it, you know what I mean? But so yeah, it's like for me, and what I teach is to tap into that vision, for the most part, if we allow ourselves to get into that dreaming space again, we have lots of ideas of things we'd like to create, right? Some of us have cut that off completely just because we don't think it's a possibility anymore. But if you can get through that into that space of tapping into just a broad vision of what you want to create, because I have a pretty good idea of what I want to create in this world, you know, like certain elements of it. Am I limited to that? Hell no, because I think there's going to probably be way more attached to it that I haven't even begun to dream of yet, right? But from what I can see right now, I have like a vision of what I want to create. How am I going to get there? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, what's it going to look like exactly? I don't care. But what I do know is that I have to be in the process of creating it, otherwise I'm miserable, because like just the process of creating it brings me great joy, you know? Like if those things were to never actualize, I don't actually really care, because like I'm having so much fun in this moment, just like connecting with people and being where I'm at and whatever, you know, that I don't care how that comes about. So it's like you gotta have a vision. If you really feel like you're gonna create something, you have the vision, and you can like dream about what it might look like or whatever, feel what it might feel like if that were to actually happen, right? And then you just kind of reverse engineer it down to one dot, is what I say, right? Because like the problem is that we see a vision, and then we don't know how the dots are going to connect, and so we like send ourselves into overwhelm, and then also where we're like trying to motivate, push through, like I got to get to this dot, and then this dot, and then this dot, and then this dot, right? So it's like kind of choosing the thing. This is the empowered surrender part. Choosing the thing and then relinquishing all of the details. To like, I envision it like there's a higher me standing on a building. This is the analogy I always use. I'm standing in a like crowded street party, you know, like elbow to elbow, and people are like dancing, and I can't get out. I'm feeling claustrophobic, and I'm like, get me the hell out of here. And so I'm like trying. The people around me are really tall, and I'm like trying to like wriggle my way out, and I'm struggling, right? And I can't find the best way out because I can't see. You know, there's just people, walls of people around me. But I look up. And on top of the building is another me, right? Another Chandra who has like a higher vantage point, basically, right? Who can see the whole thing from above. And I'm like, hey, Chandra, how the hell do I get out of here, right? And she was like, yeah, just crawl under the legs of the person in front of you and hang a left, and you'll see a clearing. And I'm like, oh, badass. And so I do it. You know, it's like I just like call in for that awareness, right? So it's like, what's the next dot? Cool, I'll do that dot, and I just trust that the next dot's going to be presented to me mid that dot, you know? When I come upon completion of that dot, right, then the next dot will pop in. Upon completion of that dot, the next dot will come in. Sometimes I have to motivate myself to do the dot, right? So like for instance, I knew that what I'm creating requires a large community of people, right? And so the dot was get in front of your computer and write every day, create valuable content for people, you know, that will bring people up to you. And so my dot was simply to sit in front of my computer every single morning. And the only thing that I set as my intention was, because actually when I started doing this, I was in a very uninspired place. Like I was like, I don't have anything to write about, blah. You know, I was like having a total writer's block. And so I made myself every single day just sit in front of the computer. This was my intention. I'm going to sit in front of my computer for 5 minutes with a blank document open and my fingers on the keyboard. And I'm going to push some buttons. I don't care what comes up. Right? And so I did this, and it was really weird that was me choosing it and saying to the universe, okay, I'm ready for this dot, right? Like, give me the information. So I had to motivate myself to do the thing that I was like getting, that was kind of my next step, to motivate myself. But the motivation is a very small part of it. If you stick through it, it turns into inspiration. One of the people that I've seen illustrate this the best is Kyle Cease. Do you know of Kyle Cease?
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah. So he draws that little diagram, right, where it's like this box and it's split diagonally in half, and this first part is like the bulk of the work, the motivation part, right? And we all think that it's going to be like that the whole way, you know. We're going to have to be motivating and pushing ourselves, but there's this like there's this like momentum point where it becomes easy and it just starts flowing, right? And so what I've come, just in addition to that, what I've come to realize is like if you're pushing yourself to do a dot and you're consistently showing up to do the dot and it doesn't turn into inspiration at some point, then that's not the thing, right? Then you move on to the next dot and keep motivating yourself to do each dot. And if it doesn't turn into an inspired place, if it doesn't ultimately end up bringing you joy, then that's not the dot, right? So you're like, okay, cool. Next dot. What's the next dot? It's a little bit of an experimentation in the beginning, and then you get more keen to like what the energy feels like and things like that, and you get a little bit more intuitive and aware, and it becomes easier. So that's kind of my formula for motivating yourself to do the big vision.
Wow, I really like that because it's like the opposite of like because the way that I have, I've envisioned things before, and like I basically like backtrack and like try to figure out like all the different steps that I need to take in order to get there. So it's kind of like a linear, like a GPS kind of coordinate kind of thing. Like, like you go straight down this road, you make a left, you go straight down that road, you make a right, and then you get to your destination. But like but the way that you're going about it is like, okay, this is where, this is the destination. I have no idea how I'm going to get there, but I trust that, and this is also something that I was noticing is it's kind of like I don't know how to describe this other than like it's like another dimension. Like that reality is like vibrating on a certain frequency. Like so I guess like so on that frequency, when you're vibrating with that frequency, then everything that you need in order to like I don't know, I'm trying to like verbally describe this, but it's like basically you're already there. Like as soon as you like are on that frequency, you already are basically embodying the vision. It just hasn't like manifested in your reality yet. So it's just a matter of like consistently staying on that frequency, like bringing yourself back and back and back to that frequency, and then like trusting that when you're on that frequency, everything that's happening is moving you closer towards that thing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So like the second, and this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, like the asking part a lot of times is done because the second we have a desire, it's created like that. Like it's all the entanglements, quantum entanglements of the universe have conspired to make that a reality, right? Because that's how powerful of a creator you are. You just have to align with it, right? And so, and it can be done that way. It can be done in a linear way. The problem that I see happening, and you can like reverse engineer. I usually reverse engineer kind of like, I mean, it's hard to know all the steps. That's the thing, especially if you're working with a really big vision. It's hard to know all the steps. So you can kind of reverse engineer to the point where you can get to a first dot, right? But then you just have to like let it all go. A lot of times I'll be working on a dot and it could ultimately end up being totally irrelevant from my brain's perspective, but it was something that I had to do to like learn a little intricacy of like how to build a business, or it's like it was an experiment I had to run to understand greater what it is that I'm doing, what it is that I'm creating, right? And so when we reverse engineer step by step in a linear fashion, it can be done that way, but the problem is that we then a lot of times get tunnel vision, and as visionaries, as people are creating some really cool things for the world, right? Tunnel vision is kind of our worst enemy, right? Because it cuts off all of our awareness to all sorts of different possibilities. And so I just like to reverse engineer, find my first dot, and then, I mean, you can be aware of these like potential steps or whatever, but it's like the goal is to stay in continual asking of like, okay, what's the greatest, most ease-filled, joyful way to usher this element of what I'm creating in, right? What are all the possibilities? Because what ends up happening is you end up creating something far far more brilliant, far more genius than you could have ever imagined with your human monkey mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like this curious combination between the two, I think.
Definitely the balance between the right and the left hemispheres.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this grounding, it's this grounding process of bringing all these esoteric teachings, and that's another thing that I'm really passionate about too, is because I've been involved in a lot of spiritual communities along my journey, which are all, it's a necessary part of the path, but it's all woo and no action,
Mm-hmm.
which doesn't actually work out so well, right? So it's got to be this like integration of all the pieces, but when you're doing action from this space of joy, from this space of gratitude, from this kind of high vibrational space, the action doesn't ever feel like work really. It's like you want to do it. It gets inspired. It's fun. Like something you enjoy. So it's just action. It's action in a whole different way than we're used to doing action, for the most part.
Very, very cool. I love that perspective. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. So, like right now, what I'm building is I'm building this online academy called the Rebel Academy for all of us rebellious souls who are here to innovate and create new things for the world, be entrepreneurs, and a lot of us are like artists or people who just like have looked at the world and haven't been able to figure out how to create the life that they know they're here to live. And so I created this online academy. It's just in the very beginning stages, but there's a bunch of like free content on there, audios and things like that, to help with these foundational energetic foundation, right, for the beginnings of building your playground. And then ultimately we'll end up going into kind of the more nitty-gritties of it, the more specifics of it. But you got to have that base commitment to your attending to your internal landscape, right? Commitment to no longer be a victim of your experience, right? And just like the tenacity to explore things that don't look to be true, potentially, by looks of your reality. The tenacity, audacity to not care what anybody thinks, right?
Yeah.
And go in pursuit of it anyways. And then this really interesting thing happens is when you're a bold motherfucker like that, what ends up happening is your reality starts mirroring that, right? And then people start showing up and supporting this new reality that you've built, right? So then you reintegrate. Like I'm in the point now where I'm starting to reintegrate kind of some old relationships that I had to cut out of my life for a short time so that I could find out what I wanted to believe, right? So then you reintegrate and they show up and they start mirroring your belief in what you're doing. It's really cool. So.
Incredible process.
Yeah.
All right, so let me just check to make sure, see if there's anything else.
Yeah, so I'm just going to guide people to this academy. For anybody who's watching, you can go to my website at chandranicole.com/rebel-academy, and you can register for free. And I have the very first module of a course that I'm calling "Fuck This Shit" up in the Rebel Academy, and it's for when you're at that crossroad. The very beginnings of when you're at that crossroad, how you begin laying that vibrational playground, foundation for your playground. So you can go check it out.
What was that link again?
Yeah, it's chandranicole.com/rebel-academy.
Awesome.
There's just a simple registration process, and it's 100% free. And so I feel really strongly about helping people get those foundational tools, and so I'm offering them up at no charge.
All right. Cool. Well, I think we'll call it a day for the interview.
Awesome.
I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing everything that you have. It's like blown my mind, and I'm sure if it's blown my mind, then everybody tuning in has experienced expansion through this process. So
awesome. That's what we're all about. We love it. Thank you so much. I so enjoyed connecting with you and chatting with you. Stay in touch.
Definitely. Thanks, Chandra.
Right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.